how's it going everybody? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to the next dev vlog setting sails for Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord and of course the DLC War Sails that is planning to release in early fall, so most likely probably late August, early September. And I've got to say, this dev vlog is actually jam-packed with some really good information. This is hands down the best one they've done. The first Q&A was absolutely abysmal when I called that stuff out. We got no new information and it was just no. The second Q&A was a little bit better, but finally we are getting some solid information. We get some glimpses about the new campaign map changes, the new islands where the Nords are going, and also the expansion down into the kind of northern eastern river system in the Kuzites, and you can see factions getting moved around, etc. On top of that, we also get a glimpse at the expanded rivers actually in Calradia, like in the mainland, so you'll be able to sail through there. We get information about being able to blockade cities and reinforcing them. As well as that, we also get information about the actual ship kind of management system and creation of the ships and stuff, which is really cool, and how you can upgrade them with different stuff that will give them different bonuses. Again, a really good bonus. And then finally we find out a bit more about the naval travel on the campaign map and how winds and storms and other things are going to affect that. So as I said, it's jam-packed and actually some really good information, which I'm super happy to see. We are of course still lacking any form of naval combat gameplay, and I think that's going to be the biggest selling point on it, because you know that's what people are going to be doing. People don't play Bannerlord for the legendary late game campaign, do they? No, they play it for the epic battles. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to see that maybe in the next one, whether they make a video or whatever they do, because they have promised that it's not just going to be an F1, F3, and you know obviously we'll have to wait and find out if that's actually true. But yeah, again, if you want to just kind of read the blog for yourself, I'll leave it down below in the description, but let's dive into it. I'm going to go through basically all the points, give my thoughts, and kind of just run through it that way. So they started off with saying, "Greetings, warriors of Calradia." I sound just like the dude in the videos. Welcome to the War Sails development blog series. We're excited to share our progress on the features taking shape, though as with all things in development, please note the details may shift as we navigate our course towards the release of an expansion in early fall 2025. With War Sails, Calradia's horizons have grown quite literally. Today, we want to take you behind the scenes of the world map expansion and share how we're reshaping the land and sea to support the introduction of newly added Nord faction and naval gameplay. We'll also be diving into the systems that shape life at sea, from the flow of ship movement to the tactics of naval blockades and the stormy hazards that test every voyage across the Calradian waters. So here we go. New shores and new struggles. The world map in War Sails is now stretched beyond its former borders. With an expansion to the north, we can divide these additional parts into 3 sections, starting with the new rugged long strip of the south-facing coastline, the Nordyar proper. Passing through the terrain often means crossing rocky mountains and pushing through the valleys filled with dense forests, not to mention the icy cold winters. So as you guys can see, this is above the sturgeons, and we can have a nice little wealth of settlements and castles. I have noticed that the Nords definitely do lack like actual lots of cities. They have a handful of castles, but they don't have the most land, or I guess like settled land as everybody else, obviously attributing to their naval prowess. But yeah, as you guys can see, a good glimpse of what that's going to be, and I've got Bannerlord loaded up right here so we can take a look at it, because I've got the mod on. So basically, this strip of land up here, I'm using the zoom out mod so we can actually zoom out and see a little bit more of the actual kind of surrounding of Bannerlord. But yeah, so basically this stretch of land, I think has been expanded out a little bit towards the left-hand side. You can see if I load back up this and we put it side by side, you can see that the lands right there of Reworks is there. You can see it. So yeah, this kind of stretches out a little bit more, and obviously we'll have a lot more detail than it currently has. But you can assume that all of this land will be filled in. It's interesting also to see that their settlements all their cities are basically going to be port cities, which allows them to be blockaded, but you can also break blockades and other things. They actually talk a lot about that as we get further into this dev vlog. So that's the first bit of land. We then also have to the west, across the seas, we find the recent colonized island of Bannerlord, the land of bones. This refers to either the Walrus Eyrie that drew the original settlers there, or the remains that left along the desolate shores. So again, this is newly colonized, apparently, so that's kind of, I guess, to describe it, there's not really much here. There's going to be a couple villages, there's one city, and also one castle. I imagine you'll be using this if you're playing as the Nord Nords as a launching point to invade like Valandia and Britannia, etc. And if we go back to the campaign map, you guys can see, so it's basically this island right here has been dragged down and basically plopped about like there on the campaign map. So yeah, it's been brought about half the distance inwards. Again, there's also this big island up here. I don't know, I guess that's nothing that they're going to add in right now, but yeah, so basically this has been dragged down and brought to about here. Actually, realistically, even further than that, because it's just off the coastline of this, right? So you can see the Sturgian lands, which is the castle, is like right here. So yeah, if anything, it's been brought even further down right there. Again, there's obviously been additions made, so like I imagine this this stretch of water here has been expanded. This has probably been pushed further north to give more sea area right there. So again, there's going to be more additions to the campaign map than just what the Nords have had added in. But they've also had additions right here. So to the east of Novigrad, which is the main stretch that we saw a second ago, you may find yourself wandering through the Jumine River area, where mysterious burial pits left by some long-forgotten people lie scattered along the riverbed. Pretty interesting, right? Long forgotten people. Could that be hinting at a DLC down the line of a long forgotten people? Who knows? Hopefully it does. The river runs south, eventually reaching the Kuzite lands, allowing Nords to raid and trade along the shores of the lake. So as we can see by the picture right here, they're going to have a whole wealth of settlements. Again, another port town. I mean, maybe they have any landlocked. So yeah, this river is going to reach all the way in here. And as you guys can see, like I said, this stretch of water has been expanded pretty massively to allow that. You can traverse all of these rivers as well, so you can basically sail through here to raid caravans, and it does look like you can also go pretty deep. Again, if we take a look at it, it's this part right here that has been expanded. So it seems like the Kuzite lands have been pushed down, the Sturgeons have been pushed more to the west right there, and then this entire stretch of land has also been put in. So again, I wonder if there'll be a river like stretching all the way through here maybe that you'll be able to traverse, or if it's going to be like coming along here to go in. I don't actually know. I mean, you'll also be able to get into this section of water as well, into the Empire, and again, I imagine all of this river will kind of be traversable, probably going into this big stretch right there as well. But again, it's going to be interesting to I guess play as the Nords, because I feel like they feel very stretched out. If they end up fighting a war, like normally everybody fights a war on like one or maybe two fronts, right? Because that's who they're facing, right? The Sturgeons are either going to be fighting over here, or they're going to be fighting here. The Britannians are either going to be fighting here or like here, but all their lands pretty close together. The Azerite again kind of have that issue, I guess, but either here or here. But you know, with the new additions of naval combat, it feels like the Nords are going to be really like up against it, fighting along this entire line. I guess they're like a pseudo Azerite in that regards, but being able to sail better. But yeah, new additions right here. That's going to be the expansion there with more rivers and other things along them lines to help the Nords raid and do their thing. They then go on to mention a bit more about the rivers inland. Again, I won't read all of that, but you guys will basically be able to see these rivers have been expanded to accommodate naval battles and also naval engagements. There are going to be custom maps for the naval engagements in these rivers. They're going to be much more close quarters, so maybe some navies, I think again they go on to mention where the long ships are much better in these actual kind of river places. They'll be able to outmaneuver and outperform the bigger ships of say the Empire, who are much better in the open sea, which is pretty cool. But yeah, windy, and then that's also seen plenty more additions to it. Again, if we take a look at Legatia, you already see the huge differences. Like this is Legatia now, and then that is it like now. So you can see like the huge differences in these running rivers. You can see Legatia. I'm kind of looking at it at the wrong angle, even though it does also look like this castle has also been moved as well. Yeah, so again, big differences. It looks like this castle has basically, yeah, this has been like moved down to like here, and then this castle has been moved a lot more to like situate right there. Maybe the big Hermit mountain has also been changed. Okay, so next we move on to naval blockades, which I think are really interesting to me, and there's a point to that I want to get onto after we've read this. So several towns have also been relocated closer to water, weaving them into the expanding maritime trade network. The settlements now hugging rivers and coast danger sails closer. Rival ports are now just a voyage away to meet this new maritime threat. Both parties and armies can now travel by water, gaining access to naval movement and combat. Armies in particular are restructured into fleets once they set sail, retaining much of their land-based function, though with some changes and limitations. So it seems like when you are in an army and you go to sea, you're going to basically just be like an army at sea. It doesn't seem like there's too much besides some changes and limitations. I imagine maybe that's going to be to do with capacity of being able to actually like have that many ships to be able to take that many people on the on the sea. Parties with ships and fleets play a major role in supporting sieges out of coastal settlements, not by storming towns from the sea. Pretty disappointing. I was hoping that you could do like a naval siege, but by enforcing naval blockades and cutting off reinforcements, trade, and escape. When a force besieges a coastal settlement and has ships available, a blockade is automatically formed once the siege camp is established. So again, it doesn't seem like from that, which I'm a little bit disappointed about, not gonna lie, that we're not gonna be able to launch a siege attack from the sea. That would have been so cool, having a naval landing and like storming the beaches of Normandy, but it doesn't seem like that is going to be the case, and yeah, that kind of sucks. I feel like that's a bit of a disappointment. You know, when you're doing naval stuff, I always kind of thought about like the siege of Carthage from Rome 2, doing something along those lines. However, they continue to go on by saying maintaining a blockade introduces new risks and decisions. Enemy naval parties may attempt to aid and the defenders. The besieging players must then choose to engage in a naval battle or withdraw. Victory keeps the blockade intact. Defeat lifts both the blockade and the siege. Withdrawing preserves the land siege, but allowing the enemies to reinforce the town by water. Again, I feel like that's a bit weird, right? Like, yeah, we lost at sea, but why should I then lose my land's siege preparation? Doesn't really make sense. Again, does seem a little bit weird. However, one thing I do really like, if you can defeat the blockade, you can then just reinforce the town. And again, if the enemy aren't blockading you, you can basically reinforce the town by the navy. One of the biggest things I think in Bannerlord is how fun defensive siege battles are, and you can basically never do that because you click a button and you end up just losing half your army, right, to try and break in and defend it, and there's nothing you can do about it. You lose like 50 battalion thanes, and it's like, great, well, I wish I didn't do that now. However, having this mechanic where we can actually break the blockade and reinforce, or just reinforce normally if they're not blockading in a siege, is huge. It's going to basically force so many more defensive siege battles, which are so much fun to actually fight in, and you're not just going to stupidly lose some soldiers. I feel like they should make a event like when you sally out to destroy siege equipment to actually break into the settlement and reinforce, or maybe have a special building that allows you to reinforce through a secret passageway or something else along those lines, because again, yeah, the current mechanic is beyond dumb where you just click break in and lose half your army, and it's like, well, great, I can't even choose what soldiers die. It's just so dumb. So yeah, hopefully they continue on there, but overall I think blockades are cool. They also say the player can also attempt to reinforce a besieging town from water, either by breaking through the blockade at a cost of some troops, which is what I was just saying, or by attack. So again, you can do it by breaking through the blockade at a cost of some troops. I imagine that's just like clicking a button and losing half your army. Such a dumb mechanic. Or by attacking the fleet directly to lift it. Likewise, it traps inside. They may try. Yeah, like again, I feel like there should just be like a sally out event that happens here. But still, I like the idea that if you're not blockading, you can just reinforce for free. And again, that's also going to mean that if you're not blockading a coastal town, you're probably not going to be able to starve them out as well, because they're going to be getting supplies through the sea, which again is really cool, and I like that. So some good bonuses here, some cool stuff here, also some disappointing stuff. Overall, it's fine. You know, it is what it is. I would have liked to have seen a siege defense, but I guess there's probably a lot of work to do that for every single custom settlement and stuff, but still, you know, it's a DLC. We're paying probably $30 for it, so I would have liked to have seen that. Next, we move on to the actual ship maintenance and upgrading your ships, etc. So hoisting the sails. Your naval journey begins at any town with access to the sea or a river. From these ports, you can purchase or sell ships, repair and upgrade them. All for the right price in dinars, which is good because, again, I feel like again, especially late game Bannerlord, you have nothing, you just have too much money. So another money sink is really good, and hopefully again continue to add more of this type of stuff in. Ships can also be given to your clans either through the port, which requires a few days, blah blah blah, or by just giving them ships. So again, you'll be able to freely give ships to clan parties, etc., and take them away from them as well. We then get a nice little image of the actual ship stuff, and as you can see on the left hand side, you can actually upgrade a whole wealth of our ships, and I assume it adds in visual changes because we do upgrade our sail level 2, and you can see it is right there. You can also see the differences in ships. So a droneman, for example, has a whole wealth of upgrades. They basically have, what's that, what, 8 there's 10 different upgrades they can have, whereas the Lodya only has a lot fewer, and you can see the different types in these ships as well. They are also not going to be super cheap as well. Like this one is costing 60k, which I imagined when you want to buy it, it's probably going to be in the hundreds of thousands for like these bigger ships. So again, giving you something to spend your money on, and we can see some of the bonuses. So for example, this sails upgrade basically just gives you some extra bonuses to speed rotation, being able to increase your speed at a whim, being able to unfurl your sails, and then also gives you a boost to your campaign map movement speed as well. So I imagine you'll be able to create some pretty gnarly ships along this. I think this is cool. I'm a big fan of this. Being able to name your ship as well is nice, and you can see everything else on the right hand side with the oars count, the total troop capacity, the skeleton crew you need to actually be able to man it. So if you don't have 44 troops, you're not going to be able to sail this ship, and also the battle speed and other the HP and set sails and stuff. That's also pretty interesting actually, but you have a sail HP and also a maximum HP, which makes me think you're going to be able to destroy sails in battle as well, which is going to be cool, and I'm a big fan of that. They then go on to say, once your ships are ready, you're free to set sail in any direction across Caradia's expanded waters. You can then return to any town with naval access or disembark at suitable landing areas, though some coastlines such as sharp cliffs and rugged shores are not accessible for landing. Disembarking and boarding takes time based on your party size and inventory weight, so consider this when pursuing enemies or trying to escape quickly. Again, that's pretty cool. You're not going to be able to just basically, the enemy you're chasing isn't just going to be able to jump on a ship and run away like we can in a lot of the mods now, that they just run away and it gets kind of silly. Depending on your army, it's going to take time to get on the ship, get your supplies on there, and sail off. So you also can't just make a quick escape if you're being chased down, which I like. I'm a big fan of that because obviously it would just take time. After landing, however, you may find yourself busy raiding and sieging away from enemy settlements, eventually wandering far off from your ship. To set sail again, you can either head back to your anchored ship or make to the nearest coastal town and summon your ship. Not a big fan of that, honestly, unless you have to like leave people behind with your ships. I feel like it's just like a teleport mechanic over time, and there's like, it's just a bit silly, right? It's just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna not instantly, but I'm gonna click wait here for some time and my ship's gonna come, and it's just a bit like, you know, it kind of, I don't know, kills a bit of the immersion of an actual living, breathing ship, but I guess it is what it is. Of course, the naval speed on the campaign map is going to be a big thing, so they go on to mention how swiftly you can cut through the seas on the campaign map in War Sails, depending on the range and factors from your ship design to swift winds, and a party-based speed is determined by the ship and its commanders, which again is pretty interesting. Their hull types and any upgrades they have. So again, you're going to be able to, I imagine, make a very zippy ship that can just blitz. Maybe might not be the strongest in combat, but it's going to be very, very fast regardless. So for example, ships have shallow drafts like the Nordic longships, so they'll gain speed in coastal and river waters but are slow in the open waters, whereas the larger ships are going to be a bit better there. You also obviously have to worry about your crew or your cargo limits as well whilst operating. A ship with too few crew members will also lead to slower movement. So larger fleets also suffer a penalty, which is always interesting. Movement speed over waters is dependent on typical water, wind direction, and local currents, which is currently represented in the individual direction of an arrow indicator. Ships going against the wind will be slow. So you can see it right here in this GIF, the arrow of the wind right there, and when we go against it, the sails kind of get brought up because obviously you're going against the wind right there. So then move down here as well to the stream. So to give you an example, sailing downstream along a river is noticeably faster than going upstream, and not all rivers have the same flow strength. The C2 have defined flows. These do not shift over time and are set through a flow map that influences movement speed. So you can see right here, again with the flow, the current is coming inwards along here, going around the coastline and then up. So I imagine you'll be able to like almost like astronauts sling your spaceship around using the current as if it was gravity to fling you out, which is interesting. They then also finally go on to talking a little bit more about sea attrition, seaworthiness and storms. So seaworthiness is kind of interesting. So life at sea in War Sails wears down even the sturdiest hulls. Ships take gradual damage and will need to be repaired. This damage is influenced by weather strength, ship size, and the vessel's innate seaworthiness, a state that helps reduce the toll a sea takes. So I think seaworthiness is going to basically just be a whole wealth of things affected by your new skills, because there's 3 new skills in the game to go along with naval. Like that's going to either just like increase the bonuses or decrease the negatives that you get for being at sea. Example of an event that can actually happen at sea is going to be a storm. This storm is a weather event that basically will be circular. You can actually drift it, which is pretty funny. They go on to mention. But again, depending on if you go into the middle of the storm, the eye of the storm, that's going to be doing more damage to your ship. You're going to be taking casualties, etc., which again is obviously you're going to want to try and avoid this. But again, there's going to be really times, I guess, where you can't, if you're being chased down or you're chasing the enemy into the storm. It could be a good way of escaping, and it looks pretty cool on the campaign map right there. So I'm definitely a bit of a fan of it. They also mentioned as well that traveling in a storm is dangerous, but with the right ship and the distance from the storm's eye, it is possible to ride out the edge to gain speed. So again, you can literally like Tokyo drift around the edge of the storm using the increased winds, etc., to actually boost up your speed. However, you're going to probably take some damage here and there. But if you lose your ship at sea, what happens? So they say if you're not captured by the enemy and you survive, and you and your surviving troops will be make a desperate journey on a raft to the nearest shoreline. So basically, if you're destroyed, you're escaped or whatever, your ship's going to be destroyed and you're going to be given a raft, and basically you're going to sail to the nearest port to try and survive. Along that time, but I think you're going to lose pretty much all your cargo, so your soldiers are going to starve, and it's going to basically be like when you're starving on land, your soldiers are going to slowly die, become wounded, or just basically flee you until you finally make it back to a town. And that's going to basically be it for the dev. Again, some really interesting stuff. I'm a big fan of the ship upgrade system. This looks cool, this looks interesting. It seems like there's a lot of like mixes and stuff you can do. I'm also excited to see modders mess around with this as well. I think I'm going to be able to create some really cool stuff with that system. The naval blockade system as well is cool. Little bit disappointed about there not being like naval sieges. I think that would have been a really cool thing. Maybe not every faction gets access to them, but I don't know, it would have been cool. Regardless, I like that if you're not blockading a settlement, you can just break the blockade and reinforce the armies inside. It's going to lead to more defensive sieges, which I'm very happy with. The new map changes as well look awesome. I'm happy to see all this expansion, and I'm going to be fun to see, because it also as well, like the rest of Calradia has also been adjusted, so it's not only the Nord stuff that we're seeing here, but everything else, which I'm excited to also see the completely new Calradia. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this, drop a like, drop a comment, let me know what you guys thought of this blog down below, and I'll be interested to see your opinions. As I said, I know there's a lot of like negativity just in general around Bannerlord. I feel like people just love to shit on the game, which is fine. I'm right there with you. You've watched my videos, you know I complain a lot. However, this is definitely I think this is a very positive thing, and this dev blog is great. So hopefully we get more stuff like this in the future, and they can continue to show us. Hopefully next we'll be able to get some actual naval combat gameplay, as that's what I'm really interested in. But yeah, I'll drop a like, drop a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.